So we wanted just to get a sense of who's joining us today, just for Catherine and I's sake, but then also so that you can kind of see in the room who you're joined by, and then also an opportunity to kind of calibrate your own personal relationship to your co-op program. And then also, if there's not sparking interest, you can also think about our colleagues on your campus answering these questions similarly to you. So if you don't mind, just take a moment in the chat and mention your name, what institution you're joining us from, and then the answer to these three questions. So do you have a co-op program? Simple yes or no. And then the next two are a little bit of a spectrum answer. Feel free to answer whatever you're comfortable with, but how familiar are you with your co-op program? How closely are you working with it? How many details do you know? How confidently could you describe the ins and out of the program? And then how robust is your co-op program? Robust isn't maybe the perfect word, but it's where Catherine and I settled on just thinking about where your co-op program is in its structure. So on one end, room for growth being perhaps you're still building out the infrastructure, you're still looking to get consistent cohorts of students, still actively engaging with industry to kind of build up that cohort of industry partners, and then room for innovation being you have a strong machine functioning, but there's still opportunities for you to add implementations or new features to the program. But you probably at room for innovation, you probably have consistent cohorts of students going through and a strong base of industry partners. So if you don't mind just introducing yourself and answering how you're comfortable in the chat, that'd be great.
We have two mic tools in the room. How fun is that? And it looks like many of you are familiar and have a co-op program, but maybe a couple are just maybe thinking about starting or see some opportunities for that. And it sounds like a lot of robust programs, always room for innovation. And I would say that's true at Marquette too. Our program is pretty robust. We'll talk a little bit about those details in a moment. But we saw room for innovation and improvement. And so that's kind of the history behind why we did the program that we did and how we'll talk about that today. Yeah. Excellent. And thank you all for being such excellent participants already. We love this.
Yeah, so hopefully most people got their answers in. That's helpful for us just to get a sense of how we're delivering what we'll be sharing. But then also hopefully when we get to the discussion portion, you can get a sense of where other institutions are at, and maybe you can find some people who would be strong collaborators for what stage you're at. So thank you for your participation. And just to give some context on Marquette and some of our core entrepreneurial mindset efforts. So if you're not familiar, we are a Catholic Jesuit university. That identity is really present and visible on campus. We're located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which gives us close proximity to a lot of industry partners who we see participating in our co-op program. And then we're also very much within the city of Milwaukee, which adds to the campus experience and also is, I think, a value add when we have so many students participating in co-op experiences as well. Our college size in 2020 was 1,184 undergraduate students, and that's in subset departments of biomedical, mechanical, computer and electrical, and civil construction and environmental engineering. And we have kind of a combined effort of the traditional or more common curriculum efforts around entrepreneurial mindset. So the EML implementations in the classroom that are really common in cards and you've likely heard about in national conferences and things like that. But then we've also been incorporating entrepreneurial mindset into our co-op program, and especially as that's really a firm part of the educational experience we're offering here at Marquette. And Catherine will get into some details of how that program comes together. But as we approach EM on campus, it's really in the classroom, but then also trying to continue it as students leave campus for their co-op experiences.
Excellent. So a little bit of background. You can see some of our stats up here on this slide, but we recognize that we're very fortunate at Marquette to have some support from our college and university to have our own industry relations team. My team oversees our co-op program. We teach a professional development class to all of our sophomore students that's required. And then we also work with our corporate partners on ways to engage within the college or university and connect folks with research between faculty and companies too. So we have 2 full-time dedicated staff members, and our co-op program currently reaches 25 states and is 100 years old. So long before I ever existed, the nuts and bolts were put into place. And we have 240 companies across those 25 states. Co-ops are not required for our majors except for construction. Our industry partners have been firm in that. Our college is firm in that too, that hands-on experience is really necessary. And so our students will take 3 terms of co-op. They have 3 options for schedules. They can do a traditional co-op of every other semester, being in and out of the classroom. They could do a full calendar year from January through December, or they could bump up against a summer term. So they could do spring, summer, summer, or summer, fall, summer. They have to be on site and in class for at least one academic term each academic year. So students who aren't interested in the co-op program will often do an internship. And 95% of our students are engaged in either that research, co-op, or internship experience. So we know that they're getting some really valuable hands-on co-curricular experience before they graduate, which we're really proud of and speaks well to, I think, how we have the network that we do of companies. If at any point you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and we will answer them as we go as well. So how we build those relationships is kind of these 6 key factors. We start by finding companies that would relate or connect with the students and majors that we have. And we ask guiding questions about co-ops and internships that's made them successful. We listen to their experiences, whether they've had co-ops or internships before, what has worked, what hasn't. We reiterate the challenges that they've had and try to identify ways that we can then frame that and improve that with the EM concepts. So one of the things that we found is that when we talked with employers about entrepreneurial mindset, they were like, what, you're building entrepreneurs? You're going to have them come in and be inside knowledge gatherers and then leave and they're going to start their own, competing business with us. And we're like, no, let's step back a little bit and talk about what entrepreneurial means in this context. And in that way, it was really more about, thinking differently than maybe they've seen from our students before. With that, then we were providing them with resources and support. So we'll talk through kind of what that looks like as we go today. And then we are always doing feedback and evaluation. So we do feedback and evaluations through a Qualtrics survey at the end of each term for both students and their managers. And then we also have an industry advisory board that we reached out to for additional context as we were building out this EM particular portion of our co-op program. Somebody asked the difference between how we define co-op and internship. Co-op is that experience where they're coming in and out of the calendar or the school year and going 3 terms with the same company. So we have a requirement that students go to the same company for each of their 3 terms. We allow for knowledge of depth, and that helps with our ABET accreditation purposes. Internships are a 3-month stint only over the summer. So both options are full-time, but the difference is that they can get credit towards an elective for the co-op program, and they're able to go back multiple times and really gain that in-depth experience. We help our students process their co-op experiences through some check-ins during the semester and then through the evaluation at the end of the year. So we offer students an opportunity in the middle of their co-ops each term to check in with our office. And then if there's any concerns along the way, they know to reach out to us. And if we see concerns in the evaluation, we also reach back out to them. And then we've had students do a couple of different opportunities to share that knowledge and experience with each other. Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about the slice of co-op that we did last fall of 19?
Yes, I
Gosh.
believe we delivered it last time that we had a consistent on-campus semester, I believe, with everyone present before COVID-19. But what we had is we invited, I believe it was juniors and seniors to come and kind of give really informal reflections on their time on co-op. And it was in the freshmen and sophomore who had not been on co-op yet were invited essentially as the audience. And we had pizza, and it was actually a very kind of student-centric, very open experience. But that was an opportunity for juniors and seniors to reflect to an audience of students who hadn't gone on co-op. And so it was really back and forth. We gave them we actually structured the questions through the 3 C's of curiosity, connections, and creating value. I'm blanking on what the exact questions were, but I believe it may have been sort of what's something that you learned, or what's something that surprised you on co-op, or what are connections you made back to your curriculum or back to campus that you made? What was an opportunity that you were able to create value for your company or create value for your team on co-op? And then I believe the last question was open-ended of something that we wished you asked wished we asked you about? So is there something related to your co-op experience that you're dying to share, or that you wish was a one of the forum questions? And so students were kind of in our student success center space, just kind of sharing pizza and sharing their experiences. So that was a more of an event driven reflection opportunity, and it was nice because it was an opportunity for students who hadn't gone on co-op yet to learn more.
Excellent. So this is how we build our relationships with employers across the board, whether we're talking EM specific or whether we're just talking about our co-op program in general. And so I think that's sometimes helpful to know that these 240 companies obviously were not built overnight. It's taken 100 years, and we all have to start somewhere. So even if you're starting with those two, Kurt, two co-op opportunities, that's awesome. That's how this all started. And so I think that that relationship part of it is really important. We really value relationships at Marquette, both with students and with employers. There's a lot of individual conversations that my office is having with both parties throughout the entire year. Somebody asked what percentage of our students go on to work for those co-op employers post-graduation. And we know that 50% of them will get an offer from their company at the end of their third work term. So before they even come back to finish college. And from there, about 50% of our students are accepting those offers. So that's a 25% full match. But I think many of our employers walk away feeling like Marquette students are worth the investment for both co-op and full-time hires. And many times the companies that aren't hiring for full-time or that aren't offering those full-time opportunities is because they don't have openings, or because they want a master's degree instead, but they see this as part of that pipeline of talent growth. Excellent. So what I did when I first started in the College of Engineering, I came in a specific role to do the co-op EM program. And that was a way to focus specifically on how we could bring entrepreneurial mindset into our well-established co-op program. And so that was in fall of 17. And so one of the first things I did was a gap analysis of, are we already implementing the entrepreneurial mindset into our students and into our companies? What's our role in making sure that we help both parties have an entrepreneurial mindset experience where our students are being challenged in the ways that are appropriate for an entrepreneurial mindset? And are our students being supported from the companies in that same way? And do our companies feel comfortable challenging our students in that way? So I sat down and created a board of advisory board members from industry partners who we knew we could rely on for valuable information, who would let us kind of see the insides of the co-op program, because we often don't necessarily see them in depth. We go visit, but we don't, kind of walk through the day with them. And from there, we created some key indicators of what we believe will allow for entrepreneur mindset to flourish in those opportunities. And so we made a unique one for students. So at Marquette, we are a Jesuit Catholic Ignatian-based university. And so we also really instill ethics into our students, as many of you probably do too. And so we created a core as a foundation. We believe that all students need this foundational work before they can be successful and think about the entrepreneurial mindset components. And then we also added consequences, the ethics piece of, are you familiar with why you think the things that you do? Are you willing to be challenged by them? And what do you do when the ethics or morals that you have or believe should be safety measurements are not always met? So we added that consequences piece in at the end. I think as I reflect on this over the last 18 months in particular, I think we could always add in some diversity, equity, inclusion components to this too. I would personally put those in the core as something we all need, but that's room for growth that I have seen in the last 18 months in particular. And then on the employer side, these are kind of the mirror to the student side. So these are some of the qualities that we would look for from our employers. Are they coaching their students? Are they doing regular one-on-ones with our students? Are they letting our students add value? So they're not just behind the desk doing quality assurance all the time. That's adding value, but are they getting out to see the rest of the company? Are they able to connect with people outside of their team to understand how the company makes money and how their work and their specific role adds to that value in the bottom line of the company? So these are also up on Engineering Unleashed with individual cards if you'd like to look for them in the future, as are many of the topics that we'll be discussing today. From there, we had some changes in personnel in our office, and I took over the director role in the summer or in January of 2019. So we hired another person into the Keene co-op role. the Entrepreneur Mindset Manager role. And she created this great plan for all these interventions that we could do to improve our entrepreneurial mindset. So she started in fall of 19, got up and running, had this beautiful plan. We met with our advisory board in February 2020 to talk about these ideas. One of them was a podcast, and it was beautiful. And then COVID hit. But Matt, do you want to talk through some of these interventions a little bit that we ended up settling on, not settling on, but that we decided on?
Yes. So the STEM X talks was something that kind of came together as we were pivoting during COVID times, and that was an opportunity for our students, especially as students were continuing their co-op through some remote, some virtual, and some hybrid experiences. It was an opportunity for students to actually have conversations and recorded interviews with employers and with other students. And those conversations were rooted in curiosity, connections, creating value, and consequences. And that was an opportunity to kind of continue the reflection period throughout the co-op experience. And that one in particular, I think, was really helpful in the pandemic experience. But then also as we transition out, it's something that we can continue on because it does provide a lot more access, especially as co-ops are across the country and some of them keep in closer contact with campus and others are a little bit spread far and wide. It's an opportunity to still have these virtual conversations between students and employers that students can hear from their peers, hear from employers who were once in their shoes, and sort of collaborate on just kind of exploring this entrepreneurial mindset as it applies to co-op. And so that was a nice live discussion that we were able to accomplish. And so that's sort of the student to employer arrow there. And then the supervisor employer best practice videos. So those were from our staff here at Marquette speaking directly to employers. And so those were video resources created for sorry, I'm just checking the chat. So those were employer resources for Marquette to coach our employers on. This is what conversations we're having with students on campus around entrepreneurial mindset. Here's how we'd like you to mirror those conversations as you're having co-op check-ins with your co-ops. And so those were content geared from Marquette staff to employers. And then the student co-op video series was an opportunity for our Marquette staff to send these periodic videos to students so that they can engage in more conversations around entrepreneurial mindset, curiosity, connections, creating value. And so the last two, the supervisor and the student co-op series are really supposed to mirror conversations so that on the co-op site, the employer and the student can then kind of have their own conversations away from Marquette's intervention and kind of share, the employer is aware of what we're coaching the students on, and the students are being coached on something similar that the employers are up to speed on. And so that way, as individual companies obviously have their own mentoring programs, and beyond entrepreneurial mindset, they have their own company values that they're regularly talking about. These can be injected into those conversations because both parties are getting coached from Marquette simultaneously. And Catherine, if there's anything else you want to add that I may have missed.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I'll add just a few details. So the STEMX Talks originally supposed to be a podcast. We went to the video and we found, of course, as you probably all know, that students' attention span in the virtual world is maybe not as long as it is in person, or they're better at hiding it in person. So those conversations, the filming itself probably took 30 to 45 minutes per partnership, but they were pared down to about 15 minutes. And so we see that as an opportunity. We would love to see, the STEMX Talks were supposed to be in person, like a TEDx talk. So we'd love to see that happen again so that more students could see it. We could bring in students outside of the College of Engineering to participate too. I think there'd be a lot of value that could be added in terms of bringing in somebody from finance or somebody from marketing to talk about how they work with engineering in a unique way, so that students can see the full gamut of not being just in their silo or their team when they're on campus in the co-op or when they're full-time. The supervisor, each of these different interventions are also cards on Engineering Unleashed. So you could go find the YouTube links for any of these. But the supervisor was really specific. These were recorded last summer, so they're really specific to COVID actually. And that's something that we hope to continue in the future. It's just a matter of staffing and time to do them, but they were really effective in helping employers get 5 minutes or less um, updates on what's happening with COVID and how that can impact co-ops or internships and ideas that they could work through at the time. If that was a podcast, we'd be continuing it seasonally. In the video format, there's some financial constraints, some time constraints. So we hope to bring that back in some way in the future. And then the co-ops videos are really fun. If you watch them yourself, you might notice that they feel a little silly or that they are maybe a little bit more lighthearted than the typical educational videos that we're all used to. But that's really meant to reach students where they're at. So they're pretty fun. Our students have enjoyed watching them and we're excited. So what we will do with those is we will put them up each term. So first term, second term, and third term, students will have the opportunity to watch these. So it'll be up on our D2L website for the class. And then we will inform students at the beginning of each semester that these videos are there for them to reference. So the idea is to hit them kind of each week with maybe struggles that they're experiencing on co-op, and then have that as a resource when they can't check in with us weekly or have an individual conversation with us. So we hope that students will find them effective and helpful, and we'll be implementing them this fall. So we're excited to see what students think of timing and how that impacts their experiences at co-op. So these are the interventions that we've put in place. We're excited about where they will go and what that means for relationships with both students and employers. And some of the things that we're considering now, especially as an entire office, but also specific to co-op, is how is the shift of work, the work world with remote and hybrid work going to impact our students, right? We saw that last year. A lot of our internships were canceled because employers were just scrambling and the experience was so short. We saw co-ops be delayed. So if students were supposed to co-op last summer, maybe they started in fall or spring this year. And in general, that didn't impact students' ability to graduate on time. I think there were one or two where we kind of finagled class schedules to make it work. But what does that mean when you're onboarding? And what does that mean for getting the full experience and hands-on experience? And I think many of our students have returned in some capacity to that hybrid work, but there's still that shift happening. And us as full-time employees are maybe still finding our footing in that too. And then as you're supervising a new employee, that takes a lot of extra effort. So that's one of the things that we'll be keeping our pulse on as we move forward. One of the other things that we found with our industry advisory board and the evaluations is that they were really excited about this entrepreneurial mindset being incorporated into their programs. But they've said, you know, Marquette is one of 10 or one of 20 co-ops at our company. We can't do unique treatment for one student. And so our capacity and our ability to impact companies we recognize is limited. So as we continue forward and thinking about this, how can we impact companies through students then and better support our company partners to think about entrepreneurial mindset for maybe all of their students? But we recognize that there's a capacity and a responsibility limitation to that. The other thing that they said was that this is great. We love entrepreneurial mindset, but we also need to go back to the basics. Students aren't answering their emails on time. Students are showing up not on time to work, or they're not telling us when they're not coming in. They think that they can skip work like they skipped class. And these are not things unique to Marquette, but kind of across the board with generational changes. So how do we get back to the basics first and make sure everybody has a good foundation? And honestly, I would say that of our partners too. I think that there are some partners, industry partners, who do a great job of onboarding our students, who meet with our students, who provide mentors. And there's some of our partners in the co-op program who could probably use a little bit of innovation themselves in terms of what they're doing with their co-op program to make it a little bit more valuable for our students. And we try and work with those companies one-on-one, but again, capacity limits. And then the other thing that we're considering, we call soft skills essential skills at Marquette. We think that they're necessary for everybody. And so one of the things that we're looking at expanding beyond entrepreneurial mindset is how do we bring in some social emotional learning, grit, adaptation, and resiliency education into our normal curriculum for students. So right now, the students take a 1-credit pass-fail professional development class fall of sophomore year. And we'd love to see a partnered class with that in the spring semester, where we get into more of these skill sets of not just how do you get a co-op or internship, but what do you do to be successful once you start there. So we see this as some opportunities for growth, and are excited about what that could mean for our future.